The film Kashmir Files has catapulted an issue long hidden behind a transparent wall into the limelight. The film has been warmly received by the masses, also critically, it has gotten a name for itself. This is perhaps the first time a mainstream Hindi film speaks about the exodus or genocide of the Kashmiri Pandits in the valley, which is a dark chapter in the modern Indian times. In this video, we shall dwell deep into this issue and understand it from a factual standpoint. We shall analyze political, social, as well as the economic scenario of Kashmir at that point in time. Stay with us until the video ends and do not forget to subscribe if you haven't already.
In which many Hindus were forced to march in front.
हम मजबूर थे, हमारे हाथ बंधे हुए थे, उनके नारे थे कि अगर आप नहीं निकलेंगे हम आपको मारेंगे।
जो पहले भी थ्रेटनिंग आ रही,
अब आप वापस जाएंगे कभी?
नहीं, मैं नहीं जा सकता।
तो क्या करेंगे आगे?
क्योंकि यार यहाँ अगर वहाँ से ऑफिसर ही है, उससे बेहतर है यार गली कोचों में भीख मांगना और अपने यार को पालना।
Firstly, we have to understand who are Kashmiri Pandits. These are Saraswat Brahmins who in Vedic times crossed the Saraswati river and settled in the Kashmir valley. All was well for them until India faced the incoming of the Muslim rule, particularly in the Kashmir valley. Assertive Muslim rulers overthrew the weak Lohara dynasty and started to put forth an identity and started to involve themselves in forced conversions and genocidal activities. Ruler Ali Shah was one of them. The Pandits faced such horrendous crimes until the famous Kashmiri ruler or the Sultan of Kashmir, Zainul Abidin, came to power and provided the rights to the Pandits that they had lost. He provided them with the glory that they had lost. This was followed by the Mughal ruler Akbar, who ruled Kashmir, and the Pandits were more secure than any other time. While the rulers of the Akbar were harsh on them and started to persecute the Pandits, they got a safe home only under the Sikh rule. That was the beginning of the modern times. From the beginning of the modern times in 1930s, communal persecution started against them all over again. This was continuous oppression until we reached the 1990s, when the Pandits experienced the worst kind of communal violence, where India as a country was a vibrant democracy and our constitution was in full force. Let's talk about the major issue here. The 1990s, when the modern times genocide or exodus happened with this class of people. By this time, let us remind you, 20% of the Kashmiri Pandit population had already left the valley. According to the written sources of the Kashmiri Pandits who were residents of the valley, it all started on 14 September 1989 with the murder of the advocate Tika Lal Taplu, who was a Kashmiri Pandit and who also happened to be a prominent member of the provincial wing of the BJP. His murder happened in broad daylight, while some people also call it planned assassination. From this day onwards, one after the other, Kashmiri Pandits were being killed, and the ruling government and the central government under VP Singh did not bat an eye. 19 January 1990 was particularly worse for them. On that day, the mosques in the valley issued declarations. Advertisements started to show up in the local newspapers that Kashmiri Pandits had to leave Kashmir, convert to Islam, or to be killed. Those who chose the first of these were told to leave their women behind. The Kashmiri Muslims were instructed to identify Pandit homes so that they could be systematically targeted for conversion or killing. The Judge Neela Kant Ganju, who announced a death penalty to the founder of GKLF or the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front, Maqbul Bhatt, was also murdered in broad daylight. According to the numbers given by the authentic records, approximately 3 to 4 lakh Kashmiri Pandits were driven out of their homes. They became refugees in their own homeland. Even before the term ethnic cleansing became a thing in Europe and the rest of the world, India had experienced it. Today, only 3,000 Pandits live in the valley, the rest are scattered around the country. The government did not seem to worry. No earnest attempts were made to put an end to this mess. Rather, the central government started to prepare refugee camps like there was no end to this matter, like there was no solution to this matter. The question remains, why didn't the VP Singh government budge? Many of the refugee Kashmiri Pandits who left the valley started to live in abject conditions in refugee camps across India, particularly in Jammu. Some Hindus across India tried to help the Pandits. One of them was Bala Saheb Thackeray from Maharashtra. From then till today, the situation of Kashmiri Pandits is just like that. They are refugees in their own homeland. They want to go back to their homes, but they are stopped because of the memories, because of the harsh times, and because of the long gap that they have sustained in grief and sorrow. Let me just take you back to the year 1975, from where you can look at this matter from a very political point of view. While this issue is quite a debated one, and it's a fact that what happened with Kashmiri Pandits was extremely wrong, here are some things that we have to focus on as mature citizens of the country, and we have to look at from the political point of view as well. 1975, Sheikh Abdullah and Indira Gandhi signed an accord. Sheikh Abdullah took control and started to rule Kashmir. His rule lasted till 1984. Till then, he slowly played local politics and hinted towards Islamization of the state. After his death, Farooq Abdullah took reins of the state, but later the Congress government in the center dismissed the Farooq Abdullah government on the charges that they were mistreating the Congress workers. This time, the governor of Jammu and Kashmir was Jagmohan. This was also reported by the famous India Today that the Congress workers were actually beaten up. In his place, Farooq's brother-in-law, also known as Gul Shah or GM Shah, was appointed as the CM. This guy did what was not needed. He ran a rogue administration, and under his rule, the first ever proper Hindu-Muslim riots took place in Jammu and Kashmir. His administration and the government favored the Muslims, and there were widespread protests across the region. The governor, Jagmohan, dismissed the government, and Jammu and Kashmir came under the president's rule. Next year, in 1987, elections were held, but the catch here is the elections were rigged. People like Syed Ali Shah Gilani and Yasin Malik contested and campaigned in these elections. They were all in an organization called as Muslim United Front, which will further go on to become the JKLF or the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front. But since these elections were rigged with the arrogance of the Abdullahs and the Congress party, these people who belong to the Muslim United Front lost the elections, and full time they became separatists. JKLF was born. Post this, the story reaches 1989, where we see the starting of the Kashmiri Pandits Exodus, the death of Tika Lal Taplu. 2 months later, in the year 1989 December, VP Singh government comes to power. Now VP Singh government comes to power, they appoint Mufti Muhammad Saeed as the Home Minister of India. The same Saeed family or the Mufti family that was also important part of Jammu and Kashmir politics. The first intention of Mufti Muhammad Saeed after coming to power is to overthrow Farooq and the Abdullah government from Jammu and Kashmir. For that, he puts pressure on the central government to appoint Jagmohan again as the governor of Kashmir. Even before Jagmohan is appointed, a tragic incident happens. The 23-year-old daughter of Mufti Muhammad Saeed, Rubaya Saeed, gets kidnapped. In return, the terrorists demand the release of Mushtaq Ahmad Zargar, aka Latram. After this incident, the Home Ministry and the central government loses all kinds of authority. Exodus is in full power. Kashmiri Pandits are being driven out of their homeland. People are killed. People are murdered. Women are raped. And politics is going on in a very, very full-fledged manner. Right after this, Jagmohan still appointed the governor of Kashmir. Farooq Abdullah resigns and the exodus is completed. If you look at it, ladies and gentlemen, you have three parties here. One, the Congress. Second, the ruling families of Kashmir. Third, the VP Singh government, which was powered by the Bharatiya Janata Party led by Lal Krishna Advani. Now, if you look at it from a neutral standpoint, not one party, not one community, not one class of people, but several of them were responsible for this. If you want to know more about what exactly happened and how the situation could be controlled, you should read a lot of recommendations, a lot of committee reports that were published. But it is important for us to understand how the situation was, the political condition of Jammu and Kashmir at that point in time was, so that we get a better idea into this issue. Well, the film indeed is a beautiful film. It speaks about reality, it speaks about facts. But what is wrong here is using this film for a political agenda, is using this film for ideological superiority, is using this film to drive a narrative. Let's take it as a beautiful piece of art that has a very strong hint of reality in it. And let's try to educate the masses about what went wrong and how it could be bettered, rather than installing an ideology. Read up more about this. There is a lot of content available. This is what we could provide you in this time frame. Thank you so much for watching NewsHamster. Stay tuned for more such content ahead.